i.e., this is not about time management. This is about why no matter how many hours you have, your life still doesn't move. Most people believe the problem is discipline. They think if they just woke up earlier, planned better, or followed some optimized routine, everything would change. But what they don't see is that their 24 hours are already being controlled, not by a schedule, but by invisible forces that shape how they think, decide, and act. When you look at someone like Warren Buffett, it's easy to reduce his success to simple habits: reading, thinking, patience. But that's surface level observation. What's actually happening is much deeper. He is not managing time. He is operating outside of the system that consumes yours. And until you understand that system, you will keep optimizing something that was never designed to make you win. Because the truth is, your 24 hours are not neutral. They are structured. They are influenced. And most importantly, they are being quietly drained in ways you don't even notice. The first force you're dealing with is what can be called the reactive loop. The reactive loop is not about laziness, it's about orientation. It defines whether your day is driven by intention or by reaction. And for most people, the moment they wake up, the loop begins. Notifications, messages, external demands, information streams. You are not deciding your day, you are responding to it. Psychologically, this happens because the brain is wired to prioritize immediate stimuli. Anything new, urgent, or emotionally charged pulls your attention faster than something important but delayed. So even if you had a plan, it gets overridden by whatever feels pressing in the moment. Think of it like standing in the middle of a crowded street where people constantly bump into you. Every step you try to take forward is interrupted, not because you don't know where to go, but because you never get the space to move. That's what your day looks like inside the reactive loop. And here's where it becomes dangerous, because it creates the illusion of productivity. You feel busy, you feel engaged, you feel like you're doing something. But in reality, you're just processing other people's priorities. This is why most people end their day mentally exhausted but objectively unchanged. They spent energy but didn't create direction. Now compare that to someone like Buffett. His power is not in working more hours, it's in protecting his cognitive space. He doesn't allow his day to be fragmented by constant input. He operates from a position of control, where thinking is not interrupted by reaction. Because once your attention becomes reactive, your time stops being yours. And most people never escape this loop. Not because they can't, but because they don't even realize they're in it. But even if you manage to break out of that, there's another force waiting for you. A deeper one, less obvious, but far more powerful. This is what can be called the linear output trap. The linear output trap is built on a simple belief that your results are directly tied to the number of hours you work. More time in, more value out. It sounds logical. It feels fair. But it's one of the most limiting frameworks you can operate in, because it turns your 24 hours into a ceiling. When you think linearly, every hour becomes a unit of labor. You start measuring your worth by how much you can fit into a day. And over time, this creates a hidden pressure to always be doing something. But here's the problem. Not all hours are equal. Some hours multiply outcomes. Others just maintain motion. And most people cannot tell the difference. So they fill their day with activity, believing that movement equals progress. But it doesn't. It just creates the feeling of control while keeping them stuck in the same position. Think of it like running on a treadmill. You're putting in effort. Your body is moving. Your energy is being used. But you're not actually going anywhere. That's the linear output trap. And psychologically, it's reinforced by how society rewards visible effort. Working long hours looks productive. Being constantly busy feels responsible. Slowing down to think looks like doing nothing. So people avoid it. They stay in motion because stillness feels uncomfortable, because thinking doesn't give immediate feedback, because there's no instant reward. But that's exactly where the leverage is created. Buffett's entire strategy is built on nonlinear thinking. He doesn't aim to fill his day. He aims to make a few decisions that carry disproportionate weight, decisions that compound over time, decisions that make entire days irrelevant. Because once you step out of linear output, you stop trading time for results. You start designing outcomes that are not limited by hours. But that requires something most people avoid: deep, uninterrupted thinking. And this is where the two forces begin to connect. The reactive loop keeps you distracted. The linear output trap keeps you busy. Together, they consume your entire day. You wake up reacting and spend the rest of your time producing small, linear outputs. By the time the day ends, there's no space left for anything that actually changes your trajectory. And this is why, even with the same 24 hours, your life can stay exactly the same for years. Not because time is limited, but because your interaction with it is controlled. Most people try to fix this by adjusting schedules, waking up earlier, adding routines, cutting distractions, but they're still operating inside the same system. They're still reacting just earlier in the day. They're still producing linearly, just more efficiently. But efficiency inside a broken system doesn't create freedom. It just makes the system harder to notice. And it just makes the system harder to notice. And this is where the real shift begins. Because mastering your 24 hours is not about squeezing more into them. It's about removing the forces that are quietly taking them away from you. Once you see that, you stop asking how to manage time. You start asking who is controlling it. And more importantly, why you allowed it in the first place. But even if you manage to step outside the reactive loop, and even if you begin to question the linear output trap, there is still a deeper force shaping how your 24 hours unfold. A force that doesn't just control your actions, but quietly dictates your expectations. This is what can be called the horizon illusion. The horizon illusion is the belief that meaningful change should be visible in the short term. That if something is working, you should be able to see it, feel it, and measure it quickly. And if you can't, then it must not be worth your time. This is where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves, because the most valuable actions in your life don't produce immediate results. Reading doesn't feel like progress today. Thinking doesn't feel like progress today. Building a skill doesn't feel like progress today. So your brain begins to question them. It starts pulling you back toward activities that give faster feedback, quick tasks, immediate responses, visible outputs. And slowly, without realizing it, you drift back into the same patterns. The horizon illusion works because your mind is wired to prefer short feedback loops. It wants confirmation. It wants evidence. It wants to know that what you're doing is working. But real leverage doesn't operate like that. Think of it like planting a tree. For a long time, nothing seems to happen. You water it, you care for it, but there is no visible growth. And then, over time, something shifts. Roots that were invisible begin to support something visible. Most people quit before that moment. Not because the process failed, but because their expectation of time was wrong. Now apply that to how you use your 24 hours. If every hour needs to feel productive, you will never invest in anything that compounds. You will unconsciously avoid the very activities that could change your life simply because they don't give you immediate proof. And this is where someone like Warren Buffett separates completely from the average person. He is not just patient. He is not just patient in expectation. He understands that the majority of outcomes he cares about will not show up today or tomorrow or even this year. But when they do, they will outweigh thousands of hours of visible effort. So instead of chasing confirmation, he builds conviction. And that changes everything. Because once you stop needing immediate results, your relationship with time transforms. You no longer feel pressure to justify every hour. You no longer panic when progress isn't visible. You begin to operate on a completely different timeline. And this is where the next force begins to emerge. A force that explains why, even when people understand everything we've talked about, they still don't change. This is what can be called the identity anchor. The identity anchor is the invisible weight that keeps you consistent with who you believe you are, not who you want to be, not who you say you're becoming, but who you have repeatedly proven yourself to be. Every action you take reinforces this identity. Every day you spend reacting reinforces the identity of someone who is controlled by external demands. Every hour you spend in linear output reinforces the identity of someone who trades time for results. Every time you abandon long-term thinking reinforces the identity of someone who prioritizes immediacy over depth. And over time, this identity becomes stable. It becomes familiar. It becomes comfortable, even if it's limiting. This is why change feels so difficult, even when the path is clear, because you are not just trying to change your behavior. You are trying to break alignment with your current identity. And the mind resists that. It prefers consistency over improvement. Familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. Think of it. Like gravity, your current identity is the ground level. Every attempt to change is like trying to lift off. But without enough force, you don't escape. You rise slightly and then fall back to where you started. That force is not motivation. It's repeated, consistent proof. Proof that you can operate differently. Proof that you can think differently. Proof that your time is not controlled by the same forces anymore. And this is why most people fail, not because they lack knowledge, but because they never sustain a different pattern long enough for their identity to update. They try something new for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, but the moment discomfort appears, they revert, and the anchor pulls them back. Now, when you combine all four forces, the structure becomes clear. The reactive loop controls your attention. The linear output trap controls your effort. The horizon illusion controls your expectations. The identity anchor controls your consistency. And together, I create a closed system. A system where your 24 hours are consumed, directed, and stabilized in a way that prevents real change. This is why most people don't need more time. They need to escape the structure that defines how their time is used. Because until you break that structure, nothing external will fix it. Not a better schedule, not a new routine, not even more discipline. All of those operate inside the system, and the system is the problem. So when you look at someone like Buffett, you're not looking at a man who simply uses time well. You're looking at someone who stepped outside of these forces. He is not reacting. He is choosing. He is not producing linearly. He is leveraging asymmetry. He is not chasing short-term results. He is aligned with long-term outcomes. And most importantly, he has built an identity that is consistent with all of it. An identity that doesn't get pulled back. And that is the real mastery of 24 hours. Not control over the clock, but independence from the forces that control everyone else. Because once you reach that point, time stops feeling limited. Not because you have more of it, but because you finally stopped losing it in places that never gave anything back. And when that happens, something shifts quietly. You begin to notice that the same 24 hours you once struggled with now feel different. Not easier, but clearer, more deliberate, less fragmented. And over time, those small differences compound into something most people never experience, a life that actually moves, not in bursts of motivation, not in cycles of effort and burnout, but in a steady, controlled direction. And that's when you realize it was never about managing time. They're about managing time. It was about understanding the invisible system you were living inside and deciding to step out of it. And once you begin to step outside that system, something uncomfortable happens. Not dramatic, not obvious, but persistent. You start to feel out of sync with how other people, i.e., out of sync with what they consider normal, out of sync with the pace of the world around you, because the system you were inside wasn't just personal, it was social. This is what can be called social gravity. Social gravity is the force that pulls you toward the average behavior of the people around you. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand anything explicitly, but it constantly adjusts your standards, your expectations, your sense of what is reasonable. And the more connected you are to that environment, the stronger the pull becomes. You begin to notice it in small ways. When you try to create space for deep thinking, it feels unnatural because everyone around you is constantly busy. When you slow down to focus on long-term outcomes, it feels like you're falling behind because everyone else is chasing immediate results. When you stop reacting to every message, every notification, every demand, it feels like you're missing something important. But you're not, i.e., missing anything. You're just no longer synchronized with the system. Social gravity works because humans are wired for alignment. Your brain constantly scans for signals of what's normal, what's accepted, what's expected, and without realizing it, you adjust yourself to match it. Think of it like orbit. If you're close to a massive object, its gravity defines your path. You don't choose your direction, you inherit it. That's what happens when your environment is built on reaction, linear effort, and short-term validation. Even if you understand everything we've talked about, staying in that environment will slowly pull you back. Not instantly, but gradually, quietly, until your behavior starts to resemble the same patterns again. This is why real change often feels isolating at first, because stepping outside the system also means stepping outside the shared rhythm of most people. And most people never do that. Not because they can't, but because the discomfort of misalignment feels heavier than the cost of staying stuck. So they return. They return to the noise. They return to the noise. They return to the urgency. They return to the illusion of progress. And social gravity closes the loop. But here's what most people don't realize. Gravity weakens with distance. The further you move from an environment that reinforces those patterns, the less influence it has over you. And this doesn't necessarily mean physically leaving everything behind. It means consciously reducing the inputs that define your baseline. The conversations, the information, the expectations you expose yourself to daily. Because your 24 hours are not just shaped by what you do, they are shaped by what you are surrounded by. And once you see that, you stop trying to fight the system from within. You start redesigning your proximity to it. Now, this leads to a deeper realization, because up to this point, it might feel like everything is about avoidance. Avoid reaction, avoid linear thinking, avoid short-term expectations, avoid identity traps, avoid social gravity. But that's not the full picture, because once you remove these forces, you create something most people never experience: space. And space is not empty. It's where something else begins to form. This is what can be called the compounding mind. The compounding mind is not a habit. It's not a routine. It's a way of operating where your thoughts, decisions, and actions begin to build on each other over time. Instead of each day being isolated, disconnected, reset at zero, they start linking together. One idea leads to another. One decision amplifies the next. 1 hour of deep thinking influences months of direction. And suddenly, time starts behaving differently, because instead of being consumed, it starts accumulating. Think of it like interest. Most people spend their time like income. They earn it, they use it, and but when you enter a compounding state, your time starts acting like capital. It builds, it grows, it carries, i.e., forward. This is why someone like Warren Buffett can spend hours reading, thinking, and making very few visible moves, yet create outcomes that seem disproportionate to effort, because those hours are not isolated. They are layered, connected, compounding over decades. And this is the part that's hardest to see from the outside, because it doesn't look intense. It doesn't look fast. It doesn't look impressive in the moment. But over time, it becomes undeniable. Now contrast that with the system most people are in. Their days are fragmented. Their attention is divided. Their actions are reactive. Their expectations are short-term. Their identity is fixed. Their environment reinforces all of it. There is no compounding there, only consumption. And this is why years can pass without meaningful change, not because time didn't exist, but because it was never allowed to build. So when you ask how to master your 24 hours, you're really asking something deeper. How do you move from a system of consumption to a system of compounding? And the answer is not found in doing more. It's found in removing what prevents accumulation. Because once time is no longer interrupted, fragmented, and redirected, it begins to organize itself. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your decisions become sharper. Your actions become more intentional. And slowly, almost quietly, your life begins to move in a way that feels different, not forced, not rushed, but aligned. And that's when something becomes obvious. The people who seem to have control over their time are not controlling time at all. They have simply stopped allowing it to be controlled by everything else. And in that absence of interference, they found something most people never experience, not more hours, but more weight inside each hour.